My in-laws thought I was undocumented, until they learned who owns their apartment. My in-laws treated me like a burden, but signed their lease with my name on it. I don't know if they were always like this or if it started the moment my husband introduced me as his fiancé instead of his friend from the community center. They smiled when I was around, but it never reached their eyes. At first, I brushed it off. They were older, traditional, set in their ways. But it didn't take long before the comments started slipping through. Little jabs about how some people just come here for opportunity, how back in their day, women knew their place, how you should be grateful to have a roof over your head. All while sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee I paid for, in the apartment complex I bought before I even met their son. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't hit so close to something I'd tried to leave behind. You see, I didn't grow up with much. My mom cleaned houses, and I started working nights in high school just to help keep the lights on. I didn't have connections or money or even documents for the first 6 years of my life in the States. But I had this thing I still can't name, maybe desperation, maybe pride, that made me learn every law, every loophole, every grant, every path. By 27, I'd put myself through school, worked my way into real estate, and saved enough to buy a small complex in East LA. 8 units. Nothing glamorous, but solid, livable, mine. I never told anyone because I didn't need applause. I just wanted to breathe without begging anyone for air. And then I met Daniel. He wasn't flashy or loud. He was just decent. The kind of guy who didn't interrupt, who asked questions, who remembered things you said in passing. We met at a fundraiser where I was volunteering and he was, ironically, helping his mother set up tables for the church. We clicked slowly, carefully. I told him about my past, and he listened without flinching. I told him about my property, and he blinked, then grinned. And said, "I think that's the hottest thing I've ever heard." We got engaged 2 years later. His parents weren't thrilled. His mom hugged me like I was fragile glass. His dad didn't look me in the eye. I thought maybe it would pass. That once they saw I wasn't after anything, that I had more than they did, they'd relax. But they didn't. If anything, they got worse. They moved into one of the units after their landlord raised rent across town. Daniel asked me if I'd be willing to help. And I said yes, of course. I even offered them a reduced rate. Not free. I didn't believe in charity wrapped in resentment, but discounted enough to give them breathing room. They accepted, never said thank you, never signed the lease in front of me. Handed it to Daniel like I wasn't the legal owner. Like I was just the help. Things got weirder after they moved in. His mom would knock on our door asking to borrow small things, sugar, detergent, even a charger once, but she'd always make a face when I answered. As if she was surprised it was me and not her son. His dad started avoiding me entirely. At one point, I heard them whispering in Spanish on the stairwell about her kind and how you never really know what they're after. They didn't know I was fluent. Or maybe they did and didn't care. One night, I walked past their door and heard them arguing. His mom said, "We let her into our lives and now look." His dad said, "Daniel's blind. She's playing him." That one stuck with me. We let her in, as if I was some outsider they'd graciously allowed to exist in their world. I should have said something then, but I didn't. I waited, let the rent checks roll in. Let them gossip, let them stew. I didn't need revenge, I needed receipts. And I had them, in triplicate. But everything shifted the night of our engagement dinner. It was just 10 of us, some friends, his siblings, one cousin. His parents arrived 45 minutes late and brought their own food. "We didn't know what you people eat," his mom said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Daniel looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. I clenched my jaw and smiled. I wasn't going to let them ruin it. Not yet, but something in me snapped when she pulled me aside in the kitchen and said, "Whatever happens, just remember, this isn't your home. We're doing you a favor." I stared at her. Let the words settle. Let her believe them. Then I walked to the dining table, pulled out the lease from a folder I'd tucked in my purse, just in case, and laid it flat. Her signature. His signature. My company's stamp. "Actually," I said, loud and calm, "I let you in." The room went dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. She looked at the paper, then at me, then at Daniel. "What is this?" she asked. "The lease," I said. "To your apartment. The one you've been renting from me for 6 months." Her mouth opened, closed. His dad stood up like he wanted to leave but didn't know where to go. Daniel just nodded slowly, as if finally connecting every dot I'd quietly placed over the years. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. I didn't answer. Because what would I say? That I wanted to see how far they'd go. That I needed to know if they'd ever see me as more than a passport and a last name they couldn't pronounce. That I was tired of smiling through rooms I paid for while being treated like a guest in my own life. I just watched her, let her feel it, let it sink in. From that night on, everything changed. But not in the way you'd think. They didn't apologize. Not really. His mom started bringing me Tupperware dinners, unsolicited, and called me Mia like she always had. His dad started waving when he saw me in the driveway. But the distance stayed, like they knew I'd seen too much. Like they were scared I might say more. And maybe I will, but not yet. Some things are better when they sit in silence for a while. Some truths need time to echo. The thing is, it wasn't just about the lease. That was the surface tension. The crack in the mask. But underneath it all, there was this slow, crawling sense that they never really saw me as family, even when I bent over backwards trying to make it easy for them. I helped organize birthday dinners, called them during doctor's appointments, offered rides when their car broke down. I sent flowers on Mother's Day, not because I had to, but because I thought maybe one gesture at a time would melt whatever resentment they'd built before even meeting me. But it didn't. They never saw the gestures. They only saw what they wanted to. A girl with an accent, a different name, a background they couldn't control. A threat to the picture they had of what their son's life was supposed to look like. I started to notice the way they'd treat me differently around their friends. When the church ladies came over, I was suddenly Daniel's helper, not his fiancé. At a neighborhood cookout, his dad introduced me to someone as the building manager. Not the owner, not his daughter-in-law to be. Just someone who handles things. I could have corrected him. Could have smiled and said, actually, I signed the checks, but I didn't. I just made note, kept my receipts, let their discomfort grow in silence. That's the thing about power, when you actually have it, you don't have to scream. And I had it, not just legally, not just financially. I had the moral high ground they couldn't reach even if they climbed for years. I never stooped, not once, and they hated me for it. Hated how calm I stayed, how I didn't flinch when they pushed. But what really broke the surface wasn't something I expected. It came in the form of a letter. Slid under my door. No return address, no name. Just a single typed page, folded 3 times, with a paperclip that felt oddly out of place. At first I thought it was a complaint. One of the other tenants. Maybe someone upset about the parking situation or noise. But it wasn't that. It was a bank statement. Not mine. Theirs. Daniel's parents. Joint account. 3 transfers, all within a single month. All to a name I recognized, barely, from a foreclosure case I'd handled 2 years ago. Someone with known liens, a man who tried to forge documents and sell a condemned property. He disappeared before the hearing, left behind nothing but rumors and debt. And here was his name again, now tied to Daniel's family. I stared at the paper for a long time, trying to make sense of what it meant. Why someone would send this to me. Why now? I didn't tell Daniel right away. I couldn't, not until I understood it better. I dug through files, went back through emails, found the case summary from that year. The name matched. The routing numbers matched. The bank was out of state, somewhere they wouldn't think I'd check. But I did, and the pattern emerged slowly. Not just 3 transfers, dozens, spread across months, varying amounts, just low enough to avoid flags, just high enough to raise questions. And questions started crawling in. Why would his parents be sending money to a known scammer? Why hide it? Why use Daniel's name on some of the transfers? Yes, his name. I found it on one document. A forged signature. Sloppy, but close. Close enough to pass. I confronted him that night. Not aggressively, not accusing, just, open. I laid out the letter. Showed him the highlights. Waited. He blinked. Read it twice. Then a 3rd time. And said, "What the hell is this?" I believed him. He looked stunned. Confused. Angry, not at me, but at whatever had been building behind his back. My dad used to handle my paperwork when I was in college, he said. Bills. Stuff like that. Said it helped with my credit. I asked him when that ended. He paused. Honestly, I don't know. We stayed up most of that night digging. Calling old banks. Searching emails. He logged into a Gmail account he hadn't touched in 6 years, and there it was. Forwarded emails. Account resets. Bank logins. From his dad's address. All during a time Daniel thought he was managing his own finances. The trail wasn't perfect, but it was enough to shake something loose. And suddenly the weird behavior made sense. The coldness. The control. The way his dad once joked that Daniel should be grateful someone was watching over his money. We didn't sleep, just watched the sun come up through blinds that felt too open, like the entire world was watching now. I told him we needed a lawyer. Not just for answers, for safety. He nodded, didn't argue, but something in his face had changed. Like he was watching a memory he hadn't realized was broken replay itself through a cracked screen. His mom called the next day like nothing happened. Asked if we'd be coming to her birthday dinner. Daniel said yes. I said no. He asked why. I told him, because I'm done pretending this is normal. And that's when he told me something that I still haven't figured out. He said, there's more. I've never said it out loud. I asked what. He didn't answer, just said, come with me to the dinner. Please, I need you to see something. And that's when I knew, we weren't just dealing with fraud. We were dealing with something else entirely. Something older, deeper, something Daniel had buried under years of loyalty and silence. I said yes, and I started preparing for whatever was coming. The dinner wasn't held at a restaurant. It was at their place, Unit 3B. I had avoided going inside since the day they moved in. Something about that apartment felt like walking into a performance where everyone already knew their lines except me. But that night, Daniel knocked once and let us in like it was just another Tuesday. His mother greeted us in a pastel blouse that probably hadn't been worn in a decade. Her lipstick too bright, her smile too tight. Oh good, she said. You came after all. Daniel nodded politely. I said nothing. His father was in the recliner, already sipping something brown from a glass that looked heavier than it needed to be. So, he muttered, you brought the boss lady, huh? I almost smiled. Almost. But Daniel didn't react. He just took my hand and led me into the kitchen, quietly. Just wait, he whispered. I need you to see this. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a confrontation, maybe some documents, maybe an outburst. But instead, he opened a drawer near the sink and pulled out a brown envelope. Thick, sealed. He handed it to me without a word. I looked at him. He nodded. I opened it. Inside were photos, dozens. Old, grainy, and some yellowing at the edges. Some were of Daniel as a kid. Nothing strange at first. Birthday parties, vacations, Christmas mornings. But then I flipped one over and saw the handwriting on the back. Visit to Victor's in 98. The name hit me hard. Victor was the same man whose name had appeared on those wire transfers, the scammer from the foreclosure case. I kept flipping. More pictures. Daniel as a teenager, posing in front of a pickup truck. Daniel's dad, arm around a man I recognized from a mugshot buried in a folder on my laptop. There was no mistaking it now. Victor wasn't some distant acquaintance. He was family, close enough to be in their living room, trusted enough to hold a baby version of Daniel in his arms. I felt the air change. The way it does before a storm hits but no one has closed the windows yet. I turned back to Daniel. Did you know? He nodded slowly. I knew he was around. I didn't know what he did. My dad always called him a cousin. Said he helped out with business. I asked, what kind of business? Daniel didn't answer. He just said, there's more in the closet. We left the kitchen and walked past the dining room where his mother was pretending not to notice us. She was cutting a store-bought cake, humming too loudly. His father looked half asleep. The kind of sleep you fake when you don't want to answer questions. Daniel opened the hall closet and reached into the back. Behind some winter coats and an unused vacuum, he pulled out a battered shoebox. Inside were folders, medical bills, tax returns, envelopes from banks I'd never heard of. Some addressed to Daniel, most to his father, all full of red flags. One folder had a single sheet, an old mortgage application, with Daniel's social security number and his father's handwriting. I recognized the scrawl, had seen it on lease renewals and those quiet little notes they'd taped to our door when they wanted something. That's when it all clicked. They had been using Daniel's identity, slowly, carefully, to move money, secure loans, and, I assumed, avoid taxes. And the saddest part? They probably thought they were protecting him. Or helping him. Or maybe they just didn't care. I could feel heat crawling up my neck, the kind that makes it hard to speak without shouting. Daniel was still staring into the box, eyes vacant. Why would they keep all this here? I asked. He shook his head. I don't know. Maybe they never thought anyone would look. Maybe they thought if it ever came out, they could blame it on me. They still can, I said. If any of this is active, it's traceable. He nodded again, slower this time. Then said, there's something else you should see. But we need to go to his garage. His dad's garage wasn't part of our building. It was rented 2 blocks down. He kept tools there, boxes of stuff he swore he'd sell at a swap meet. The place was half-hoarded chaos last I saw it. I asked why there. Daniel just said, because that's where the safe is. It was nearly 10 p.m. when we got there. The streetlights buzzed with that flickering yellow that made everything look like a memory. The garage was locked, but Daniel had a key. The inside smelled like paint thinner and damp cardboard. He flicked on the light. It didn't help much, just made the shadows look thicker. He moved some crates aside and revealed an old workbench with a metal cabinet beneath. He keeps the keys taped under the drawer, he said. I raised an eyebrow. You've done this before? Once, he said, when I needed my birth certificate. We opened it. Inside was a metal cash box and a leather-bound binder. The binder was what Daniel reached for. Inside were more documents, thicker ones. Legal forms, deeds, some in Daniel's name, some in mine, my full name, my business name, but I never signed these. And none of the properties were real. They were ghost plots. Empty addresses. I felt something drop in my chest. What is this? I whispered. I think they've been using your info too, he said. Tied to fake deals. Maybe as backup in case someone came asking. I stared at him. And you're just figuring this out now? He didn't answer. Just looked scared. Honest, but scared. And I couldn't tell if it was fear of his parents or of what he might be capable of ignoring. That's when I saw something else. A photo paper clipped to one of the fake deeds. It was a property in Riverside. Half finished. Boarded windows. But in the corner of the frame was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, face blurred in motion, but the posture looked familiar. The kind of familiar that makes your skin itch. Do you know who that is? I asked. Daniel leaned in, squinted. No, he said slowly. But that house. I think they made me go there when I was a kid. Why? I asked. He didn't answer. And suddenly, I wasn't sure he really wanted to know. The rest of the ride home was quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet you share when two people are thinking the same thing. This was the kind of silence that felt like glass balancing on a shelf, just waiting for the wrong breath to send everything crashing. Daniel drove with both hands gripping the wheel too tightly. I sat beside him, the folder in my lap, trying not to think about how easily my name had become a tool in someone else's game. When we got home, I didn't go inside right away. I stood in the parking lot, staring up at the building. 8 units, 3 floors, a place I once thought of as mine, safe, solid, mine. But now every window felt like it was watching me. Every tenant like a question I didn't know how to answer. And the worst part? I had no idea how deep this went. The next morning, I called a lawyer I'd worked with briefly when one of my tenants got tangled in a predatory lending scam. She remembered me, said she'd take a look. I dropped off scanned copies of the paperwork, minus the photos. I didn't want to give away everything, not yet. She said she'd get back to me in a few days. That bought me time. Not peace, but time. Meanwhile, Daniel was unraveling. I don't mean that dramatically, I mean it literally. He stopped sleeping, stopped answering calls from his parents. Started spending hours online, digging through old emails, credit reports, anything that might explain how much of his life had been quietly rewritten. One night, he sat up in bed and said, I think my first credit card was never mine. I asked what he meant. He said, I remember getting one when I was 19. Dad said it was a starter card. Low limit, but I never signed up for it. And when I called to check the balance, they said I had 2. I stared at him. 2? He nodded. 1 in my name, 1 in mine and Victor's. I didn't know what to say. Because the more we dug, the more it looked like this wasn't just identity misuse. It was strategy, long game fraud, carefully woven through his life so that no single thread looked out of place unless you tugged hard enough. And somehow, my name had been stitched in too. Then came the call. The lawyer's voice was calm but tight. She asked if I had ever done business in Arizona. I said no. She asked if I had ever applied for a development loan in 2019 using a Wyoming-based LLC. I said absolutely not. She paused, then said, there's a $200,000 debt tied to that name. Yours. The LLC is inactive now, but the debt's sitting. Quiet, waiting. My hands went cold. I asked how that was possible. She said, the paperwork's forged. But clean. It'll take months to untangle, maybe years if they push back. I sat there staring at nothing. Daniel was across the room, eyes on me. I told him what she said. He didn't even flinch, just said, they planned for this. The next few days were a blur. Phone calls, record pulls, old tax documents suddenly going missing from our files. Even the building's maintenance logs were incomplete, some units listed as vacant when they clearly weren't. I started to wonder how much of my own business had been touched without me noticing. And then one morning, I found a note slipped under our door. Again, just like before, no envelope, no signature. This time, it said, stop looking. Family is family, let it go. I showed Daniel. He stared at the words like they were written in another language. That's my dad's handwriting, he said quietly. I'm sure of it. We changed the locks that day. Not just on our apartment, but on the main gate. I notified the tenants, told them there had been security concerns. They didn't ask questions. Most of them had learned not to. But paranoia settled into me like smoke. I started double-checking the windows, recording calls, saving receipts, watching the hallway camera twice a night just to make sure no one was coming in who shouldn't be. Then one afternoon, Daniel didn't come home. I waited, called, texted, no answer. 2 hours passed, then 4. Then I got a message, not from him, but from an unknown number. A photo, just one. Daniel, sitting at a diner. Across from his father, both of them looking away from the camera, unaware. The caption read, he still listens to the right people. My stomach dropped. I called him again, nothing. I debated driving to the police, but what would I say? That my husband was having dinner with his dad? That someone sent me a picture of it? It wasn't illegal, it wasn't even threatening, but it felt like something had shifted, like we were being watched more closely than we realized. Daniel came home at midnight. Quiet, calm, said nothing as he walked past me and into the kitchen. He poured a glass of water, sat down, then said, he wants to make a deal. I asked, what kind of deal? He looked up at me, eyes hollow. He says if we stop digging, they'll clear the debt. All of it. Erase every trace. I blinked. He can't do that. He says he can. And what does he want in return? Daniel hesitated. Everything. He wants the building. At first I thought he was joking. I even laughed, sharp and short, before I realized Daniel wasn't smiling. He sat completely still, both hands wrapped around the glass like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. I said, he wants me to hand over my building in exchange for wiping fake debt I never agreed to? Daniel nodded. He says he can make it all disappear. But only if we sign over the deed. I stared at him. And you believe him? He looked away. That silence was answer enough. Did you agree to anything? I asked. No, he said, but it came out too slow. Too measured. I didn't like the way he wouldn't look at me. I pressed again. Daniel, did you agree to anything? He finally met my eyes. I said I'd talk to you. That's it. My heart pounded. I wanted to believe him. Needed to. But something about the whole conversation made my skin crawl. He knows too much, I said. About us. About our finances. About my name. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. He always knows too much. He's been like this since I was a kid. Always had something hanging over people. A favor. A loan. A threat. It's how he keeps people in line. I asked, and you think if we give him the building, he'll just walk away? Daniel didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. People like his father don't walk away. They wait. They circle back. They dig claws in and pretend it's a handshake. The next day I went to the city records office. I wanted to pull every document tied to the property. Just to be sure nothing had been filed without my knowledge. And that's when I saw it. A pending lien application. Dated 2 weeks ago. Filed under my LLC. But the agent listed wasn't me. It was Daniel. My breath caught. I asked the clerk for a printed copy. Took it to the car and stared at it for a long time. The signature looked like mine, but only at a glance. Sloppy, like someone practiced it from memory. I called Daniel. He picked up on the first ring. Did you sign something for your dad? I asked. He paused. No. Are you sure? Yes. Then why is your name on a lien request for my building? Silence. Not even breath. Just nothing. I asked again, slower. Daniel, did you sign anything? He said it was just a power of attorney, he finally whispered. Said it was temporary, just for paperwork. I didn't know he'd use it for this. I clenched the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. When? 2 months ago. 2 months? My voice cracked. You gave him signing rights to my property 2 months ago? I didn't know it'd matter, he said. He told me it was to help with refinancing his place. He doesn't have a place. I snapped. He has my apartment, my building. I drove home fast. Too fast. I couldn't breathe until I saw Daniel standing in the hallway, holding the envelope I hadn't even realized I dropped on the kitchen counter that morning. I snatched the papers from his hand. You're either lying to me or you're the most naive man I've ever met. He looked crushed. I didn't mean, it doesn't matter what you meant, I said. He's inside everything now. He used you to get into my business. And now he's trying to use me to get full control. Daniel sat down slowly, like his legs gave out. I'm sorry, he whispered. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just played along. You don't fix men like your father by giving them more leverage, I said. You starve them of it. That night I didn't sleep. I went through every contract, every file, every password. I found traces, little things, that told me someone had been accessing my accounts remotely. Not everything, but enough to see balances, activity, tenant information. Daniel said he didn't know. I wasn't sure I believed him. The next morning I drove to meet with the lawyer again. I brought everything, every folder, every signed slip, every photo. She listened, quiet, patient. Then she said, you need to decide whether this is about saving your business or saving your marriage. Because you won't get to do both. I sat with that for a long time. She was right, one of them had to go. I didn't answer her right away. Because in that moment, I honestly didn't know. I loved Daniel, or at least I thought I did. But the lines were getting blurry. How do you trust someone who's become a doorway for everything you've built to be dismantled? How do you look at your partner and not wonder how much of the wreckage has their fingerprints on it, even if they swear they didn't know? I drove around for over an hour that day, not going anywhere in particular. I skipped 3 calls from Daniel and 1 from a number I didn't recognize. Then I parked in front of the apartment complex and just stared at it, the chipped stucco. The narrow staircases, the plants tenants kept half alive in cheap plastic pots. I used to feel proud seeing it. Now it looked like a threat with my name on it. When I finally walked back inside, Daniel was sitting on the floor, surrounded by torn paper. Envelopes, legal notices, stuff I hadn't seen before. Where did you get all this? I asked. Dad kept them in the attic, he said. I went there this morning. Took everything I could find. I knelt down slowly, picked up one letter. It was addressed to Daniel. From a debt collector, dated 5 years ago. I never saw this, I said. He never gave it to me, he replied. Said he'd taken care of it. Another envelope, this one addressed to me, at an old mailing box I hadn't used in years. Someone had rerouted it, opened it, then resealed it. They've been intercepting your mail, Daniel said. For how long? I asked. I don't know. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't trying to lie. He was unraveling, not just from guilt, but from the slow, creeping realization that the people who raised him had never trusted him. Never protected him, just used him, and maybe he hadn't been ready to see that until now. I said, we need to file something formal. Not just fight it, expose it. If they forged anything with my name, we press charges. Daniel looked terrified. You don't understand. My dad doesn't just stop. If we push, he'll burn everything. I stared at him. It's already burning. That night we began the formal process. The lawyer drafted a cease and desist. We filed to freeze the lien. Not an easy process, but with the forged documents and identity theft evidence, we had leverage. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But the next day, Unit 3B, the apartment his parents lived in, was suddenly empty. No warning, no call, no lease break notice, just gone. The furniture, the pictures, the old recliner, vanished. The door left wide open. Like they wanted us to know they didn't care anymore. Daniel paced the room like something was wrong. Not just sudden, wrong. I asked if he knew where they might go. He shook his head. No, unless. I waited. Unless what? Unless they're already setting up something else. A fallback. Another identity. Another scam. They never sit still. I spent the next week watching over my shoulder. We changed the locks again. Added cameras. Alerted the building's tenants. Then one afternoon, while checking the mail, I found a single key in an envelope. No note. No markings. Just a key. Daniel stared at it like it was cursed. That's to the old house, he said. The one I told you about. In Riverside. The one in the photo? He nodded. He's trying to draw you there, I said. He wants us to come looking. Maybe, Daniel said. Or maybe he wants to show us something. I didn't trust it, but part of me also didn't believe this was just about property anymore. It had always felt personal. Now it felt orchestrated. Too much planning. Too many layers. You don't steal someone's name, reroute their mail, forge their signature across multiple states, and then vanish unless you're planning the next move. I decided we'd go, carefully, during daylight. We didn't tell anyone. No posts. No texts. Just us, a rental car, and a folder full of printed evidence in case anything went sideways. The house was worse than the photo. Boarded windows, trash in the yard, rusted gate hanging by one hinge. But the lock on the door matched the key. We stepped inside. Dust, heat, the smell of something long dead. Broken furniture, empty beer bottles, a single chair in the corner, facing the wall. And next to it, a manila folder. My name written across the top. I opened it slowly. Inside were pictures of me. Not from social media, from real life, taken without my knowledge, at the grocery store, at the post office, once in the hallway of my building, wearing the same outfit I'd worn 2 weeks ago. Daniel stepped back. They've been watching you. I couldn't breathe, because under the photos was something worse, a contract. Typed, crisp, detailed, transferring power of attorney for every asset tied to my name. Signed, by me, only I had never seen it before. I stared at the signature. My name, written in ink I didn't recognize, in a style that looked just enough like mine to pass a quick glance but collapsed under real scrutiny. Whoever had done this had studied me. Practiced, maybe even traced. Daniel leaned over my shoulder. That's not yours. No, I said, but it's close. Close enough to convince someone who doesn't know what they're looking at, he added. I flipped the page. Notarized. Stamped. I felt like the room tilted. My chest was tight. Not fear, not exactly. Something more dangerous. Fury. The kind of cold, electric rage that starts in your teeth and works its way down your spine. This is what he wanted, I said. Not the building. Not the money. Control. Daniel didn't speak, just stared at the floor. How many people has he done this to? I asked. How long has he been doing it? My uncle, Daniel said quietly. He had a house once. Lost it. Dad said it was foreclosure. But now, he didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. The pieces were all falling into place. His father wasn't just a liar. He was a fabricator. A designer of alternate realities, ones where names didn't mean anything except as tools. Where family was just leverage. We left the house without touching anything else. I took photos of every page, every timestamp, every corner of that contract. The house felt like a trap, a theater. Like we were meant to find exactly what we did. And leave without more. That night, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. But the message that followed made my blood run cold. A voice, calm, too calm, said, "You've seen what we have. You want it to stop? Let go. Sign the deed. No cops. No lawyers. Just the paperwork. Otherwise, it gets bigger." There was no threat, no scream, just a fact. It gets bigger. We reported it, of course we did, but with no proof of identity, no direct threat, and no traceable number. The police were polite but ultimately passive. "Sounds like a civil matter," they said. I stopped sleeping after that. I felt eyes on me everywhere. I started noticing cars parked longer than usual near our complex. A man pretending to fix his watch in the lobby. Tenants asking strange questions they never asked before. "Are you still managing the building?" One woman asked. "I thought you sold it." "Who told you that?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know. Someone posted something in the laundry room." I ran downstairs. There it was. A printed page taped above the folding table, under new management. New rent policies coming soon. No signature, no contact, no official anything, just a printed lie, planted like a seed. The tenants were confused, worried. I called an emergency meeting. Explained it was fake, reassured them I was still in charge. That the property was mine. But the damage had already started. The idea was out there now, that maybe I wasn't in control. That maybe someone else was calling the shots. That night, Daniel sat beside me in the kitchen and said, "He won't stop." "You know that, right?" I nodded. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked down at the fake contract. The surveillance photos. The message. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something settle in my chest. Not defeat, not fear, something sharper. "I'm going to take everything he used against me," I said, "and build a case so loud no one can ignore it." "That means exposing him," Daniel said. "Your name, your family." He hesitated. "My name." "Then change it," I said. "Because this ends with me." He looked at me for a long time. Then nodded. "I'll help you. You already have," I said. And I meant it, because despite everything, the betrayal, the lies, the signatures, he didn't walk away. He brought the evidence into the light. Now it was my turn to do the same. I contacted a journalist, someone I trusted, someone who had written about housing scams and deed theft in the city before. I told her everything, slowly, carefully, anonymously at first. She was skeptical, until I sent the photos. The contract, the altered deed request. Then she stopped replying by email. Switched to calls. Her tone changed, from polite curiosity to full investigative gear. "This isn't just fraud," she said. "This is a network." "I know," I replied. "It's been growing inside my life for years." She said she'd need more. Proof of pattern. Other victims. I said I'd find them. I didn't know how, but I knew where to start. The tenants. The other buildings. The places Daniel's father had ever set foot near. The people who had disappeared from family parties without explanation. The cousins who suddenly stopped owning what they once bragged about. Someone else had to know something. Or at least suspect. I printed copies of everything. Filed official reports. Sent certified letters. Froze my credit. Changed my passwords. Installed cameras in every hallway and every exit. And then I waited. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Men like him don't stop when you beg. They stop when you make them visible. And I was ready to make him visible. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Front page of the Sunday investigative column. Bold headline, anonymized names, redacted photos, but if you knew anything about my building, my family, or my last name, it wasn't hard to connect the dots. Tenants knocked on my door that morning, one after another. Some in shock, some already packing, some just saying thank you. I kept the door open. Kept calm, let them ask questions I couldn't answer yet. And I didn't blame them. Because I knew how it looked, like my whole life had been built on lies. Like maybe they were next. But what most of them didn't know is that they were never the targets. They were the cover, the quiet camouflage for something much bigger. By the end of the week, 3 more people had reached out to the journalist, 2 distant relatives of Daniel. And one woman who used to be his dad's office assistant. All of them had stories. All of them had paperwork. One had a police report from 2006 that mysteriously disappeared from public records until now. We started a folder, then a spreadsheet, then a timeline. Every time I thought I'd reached the bottom of it, something new came up. A phone call, an old address, a business license tied to my tax ID. And Daniel, to his credit, stayed beside me. Quiet, ashamed, But steady. I could see it wearing him down. Watching his father become a monster in real time. But he never walked away. Not once. And then, about a month after the article went live, I got another envelope. This one had no key. No photo. Just a single sheet of paper, handwritten. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, almost frantic. It said, "You won't find what you're looking for in paperwork. Stop digging. He's not done." No signature. No address. Just that. I showed it to Daniel. He went pale. "It's my uncle's writing," he said. "But he died 3 years ago." I asked, "Are you sure?" He nodded. I handled the funeral arrangements. We took the note to the journalist. She had it tested. The ink was fresh. The paper was new. The note wasn't old. So the question wasn't who wrote it. The question was, how did someone else have his handwriting? The journalist suggested maybe it was just a scare tactic. A forgery. Maybe someone wanted us to back off. But I knew better. This wasn't random. This was specific. Personal. Someone wanted to remind me that nothing in my life had ever really been mine, not even safety. And that's when I realized something that still makes my stomach twist. It was never about the building. Not really. That was just the first thing I'd built on my own. The first proof that I could live without anyone else's permission. And that's what made me a threat. Not my money. Not my education. Not even my independence. The threat was that I'd figured out how to live outside their control, and quietly. Without trying, I'd shown someone else how to do it too. Daniel. I think that's what changed everything. Because once Daniel stopped obeying, once he started looking at his father like a stranger, that's when it turned. That's when the game changed. And now, I don't know where his parents are. We haven't seen them in almost 2 months. Their bank accounts have gone dark. Their phone numbers disconnected. I hired a private investigator who said they may have left the state. Maybe even the country, but nothing's certain. Their trail is cold, but not gone.